All right. Good morning. It is lovely to have you here. If you're watching this, it means that you've decided to get a wee bit of extra help with your media assignment, which is probably no bad idea. Hopefully, most of you are wind up watching this at some point. This is going to be just to make it kind of clear. I'll hopefully make it clear when I post these kind of assignment helps. But this is going to be in 6 steps. So right now I'm going to do steps 1, 2, and 3. And then next Friday, I'm going to do steps 4, 5, and 6. Good at numbers. It'll chunk down getting the first 2 stages of your media assignment prep done. Actually, the first 2 stages completely written. We are going to have to do things like this. It is going to be quite a lot of home learning and things like that. Not home learning, sorry, but work completed at home. And I want to make sure that anyone who has been off for any period of time can also engage in these tasks, which is why I'm doing this little one. My plan is after this first one, which might be a little bit longer because I'm giving you a wee bit of context, but after this first one, my plan is that the rest of them shouldn't be much more than 5-10 minutes each. Obviously, when you're engaging with them, you'll need to do the tasks, you'll need to make sure you've understood everything. But these looms are just to get you started and then you do the task. Obviously, if you get stuck, if there's anything that you are struggling with, if there is anything at all like that, you can email me. I probably won't check my emails between now and next Friday. I want to make that clear. I'm going to be, I'm on holiday as well. But on Friday, I will check my emails. And if you have emailed me and you've had any issues, I will hopefully try and respond to you on Friday. So what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to start talking to you about the 6 stages for this assignment start. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the brief. So you guys choosing what it is you're going to do this year for your assignment. That is going to be quite a lot of today. That's certainly going to be all of this loom. Then step 2, the first written part of your assignment is responding to the brief. Basically, it's going to be a continuation. The first thing you need to do is tell me what you're planning on doing based on what you've been set by the brief. Are you planning on doing a public service announcement? Are you planning on doing an advert? Are you planning on doing a short movie? Okay, it's completely up to you. But whatever you choose to do, you need to be you need to be very clear on that before you move forwards, and it's also your first assessed piece of work once you've written it up. It's worth 5 marks. Okay, and then the last bit of today's set will be the actual write-up of responding to the brief. And what that will mean is going in, you now have a very good idea of what you're planning on doing. I can't emphasize enough, this is your plan. Things will change, things will adapt. You'll have to adapt. Who knows where we'll be in terms of social distancing and things like that. So if you're planning on having lots of actors in your movie or a crowd scene or anything like that, you might not be able to, and that's the reality. So it's worth bearing in mind. Sorry, I seem to be very tired today. It's worth bearing in mind that this is a plan, and if your final product winds up being very different, so long as you explain, well, I planned this happened, so now I've done this instead, I've adapted. As long as you explain why it's different, that's not a problem, okay? Make sure your plan is realistic, though. I don't want, then I'm going to spend 2.5 million on CGI. Unless you have 2.5 million to spend on CGI in your movie, in which case you're grand. You go ahead. So, I am going to, actually, I want to hide my face. How do I do that? Hide my face. There we go, there it goes. Now I can yawn subtly, and you'll only just be able to tell. So, this is assignment PowerPoint. Actually, first thing I should say is this whole PowerPoint is broken into 10 areas. Okay, I will have uploaded them onto Teams. I will have hopefully put them on Show My Homework, but that's a little bit more challenging. They are certainly on Teams. If you cannot access them, I'll maybe check my emails on Monday as well, just in case. But I'm not making any promises. But if you cannot access them, let me know, and I will email them to you. But there are 10 things, 10 different documents. So you've got this main one, which is called Assignment PowerPoint Loom, which is the one that I'm going through now. This is probably the one you're least likely to need, to be honest, because I'm talking you through it. But the other 9 documents, you need to have access to, so that once I am done, you can engage with them. So the first two that you are going to need for this particular loom is one called number one. They are numbered because I thought of this. So it's number one and number two. Number one is BA Higher Media Brief, and number two is Higher Media Stimulus Sheet. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to look at the brief. The brief simply refers to the guidance or guidelines that you have been given for your media assignment. I have given you very broad and open guidance, which is in number one. All right. And there are stimuli in number two that you can use, you do not have to. I'll talk to you about that in a little minute. Like I said, if you cannot find this, email me. In this loom, I am going to take you through these sheets briefly. I've put brief in red because I'm hilarious, to ensure that you understand them. And if you cannot access the loom, please email me for the Cliff Note versions of what I do. I realise you might be sitting here going, haha, if we can't access the loom, we can't hear him just now. But you'll have downloaded this PowerPoint already, hopefully. So even if someone is struggling to access the loom, they know to email me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to see how well I hid that yawn. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to BA Higher Media Brief, which I have hopefully open somewhere. I'm going to enable editing so that it's a little less annoying. And I'm going to zoom in so that you can see it more clearly. So, ultimately, these are the three options you have for your media assignment. You have to do one of these three. You only do one of these three. Do not plan for all three, plan for one. And you'll notice they're all film. I'm not accepting any print or storyboards. I can't accept storyboards anyway. You're all at this stage higher candidates, so I cannot accept storyboards. I'm not accepting any print because it never does as well. So all of you will have to film something. Option one is a public service announcement. What that means is you can pick an issue or a topic that you want to give a public service announcement. We have in the past looked at things like the Vinnie Jones CPR advert. And if you haven't, if you YouTube Vinnie Jones CPR advert, you'll see a public service announcement that uses quite a lot of humour and things like that. We have this year, we had a brief look at the Irish Road Safety advert, and we talked about how it might be a little bit too extreme. And we've also looked at kind of charity adverts, which they border between public service and generic adverts for a product or company. But you should have a good understanding of what you will do for your public service. If you are doing a public service announcement, my recommendation is to do it on coronavirus. If you do it on coronavirus, more specifically, my recommendation would be to do a public service announcement for school pupils in the Clare Academy on coronavirus. Because then what we can do is we can plan it with a view of showing it to, let's say, first, second and third year pupils, which gives you a very defined audience. It gives you a lot of institutional factors you can talk about, and it means that you know exactly what you're planning for and exactly what your limitations will be. All right. It will also be much easier to film. So, public service announcement, that is option one. Option number two is to work individually to plan and create a short film that will appeal to teenagers that is no longer than 2 minutes. Okay. There was no stifling that yawn. With this one, it's a little bit tougher. You'll have to be very certain about not only what you're making, but how you're making it and the full flow of the narrative for this one to get it just right. My advice would be this is the most challenging. All right, I would say that's the most challenging. That one's fairly medium, and number three will be the easiest. But I know a few of you have already picked it, so I'm not by any means wanting to dissuade you. I just want you to be aware of the difficulties that you're facing. Okay, you have to have a full completed narrative. You need to use a variety of techniques, and it has to kind of be engaging in all terms of the 7 key aspects. It can be done, it's just a wee bit more challenging. Cannot emphasize enough, this has to be a completed film. This has to be a complete story in 2 minutes. I cannot accept work that is incomplete because it will, like any incomplete work, will not kind of pass. All right, it's one of the criteria for passing this assignment is you submit something in its entirety. Okay. With this, I would recommend a horror or a romance. Okay, one that I got that did very well. Actually, it was last year. That someone kind of showed me that did very well. Was just a guy phoning up, so we assume a partner, apologising, saying that he's running late at work, and saying he will be there soon. He then arrives at a restaurant. They have a conversation. This was with Peoples in Beclair, by the way. They have a conversation. They're chatting away. He's apologising, things like that. They hug. They say goodbye. They go their separate ways after the date. It seems to have gone very well. And then on his way home, it has quite a nice change of tone. The music becomes less kind of like, ooh, yay. And he stops by a war memorial, which has some nice flowers on it. He stares at the war memorial for a wee while, and then he picks up the flowers and carries on going. He gets home, stops outside his house, puts on a wedding ring, and taps on the door, and his wife opens it. And it's quite a nice one because you think it's going to be about their relationship, and actually it just turns out that he's cheating on his wife or planning on. It was nice. It was simple. It had everything you would want in it. And it was it used a variety of techniques. It used a kind of good media language. It used good lighting. It acknowledged where it hadn't. So you do need to be sure that you have an entire film you can talk about if you choose to do that. Last one is an advert. This is going to be the easiest of the three. I would still recommend a horror advert. I would recommend horror quite strongly over romance for an advert because I think it's much easier to utilize the media language that we're looking for. And have it around between 30 seconds and a minute. One advert. That's going to be what we do the majority of our planning on, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it here. You just need to make sure that you are prepared with a variety of techniques that you can talk about and things that you can put into your advert. All right. I will talk a bit more about that at the planning stage. All right. But one of the things you have to decide. So the first thing you have to decide is whether you're doing option 1, 2, or 3: public service, a film, or an advert. Okay. There are certain things to be aware of before you make that decision. Your finished work will be submitted to the SQA, so it needs to be containing nothing illegal. It needs to obviously conform to societal norms, rules, and laws. The level of finish is that it needs to be a completed moving picture text, which I've told you already. It must be suitable. Now, I know it's suitable to be viewed by all audiences. I will make an exception for... what I'm going to say is make sure it would be suitable for YouTube. Make sure that if it was reported on YouTube, it wouldn't be taken down. All right? That means you can kind of get away with up to about 14, 15-year-olds. No massive amounts of blood, guts, and gore. No massive amounts of violence. Ultimately, I think this should be something that should be able to be showed to at the very youngest. Like it has to be applicable to at least, I'd say, 14-year-olds. Okay. You can look at BBFC if you're doing a wee movie, or you can look at YouTube regulations. If you're doing an advert, you have to look at Advertising Standards Authority. That'll hold you to a much kind of tighter restrictions. And if you're doing a public service announcement, then you just have to think, okay, when and where will this be shown? What is appropriate for that? And the odds are you're going to show it in a school. So that would mean minimal blood, guts, and violence, obviously. You're obviously constrained by laws, rules, and regulations. You're constrained by where you choose to film, the limitations and the regulations in place there. I'm going to say you have a budget just now of, let's say, £5. All right. That will be reduced. I want to make that clear. You're planning for a budget of £5. So put something in your budget that you could spend £5 on that you don't actually need. It sounds ridiculous and redundant, but I'm then going to reduce that later on in the year, and I will wind up giving you a £2 or £3 budget, and it has to be something that you can get from Amazon. You will come to me with the thing you want, and I will buy it for you. All right. You will be able to spend your own money buying equipment, but you won't plan for that just now. All right. You're limited to the equipment within the school and your homes. So there are a couple of iPads. You have your own mobile phones. If you don't have a kind of mobile phone that has suitable filming software, then there are cameras in the schools, which I can provide you with on a temporary basis. There's also things like iMovie and Movie Maker for editing, and there's also software in the school as well, I'm quite sure. I would advise you now to be familiarising yourself with kind of different editing softwares. Negotiating the brief. You will, and this is what I'm going to go on to, need to decide on your target audience. So I've told you it needs to target teenagers, but you have to decide on other audiences above and beyond that. You'll need to decide on your purpose. All right. Now, each of these has a set purpose already. Public service announcement is to inform, a film is to entertain, and an advert is kind of a mix of the two. It's to inform, engage, and entertain. It's also to persuade people to come watch it. It's up to you. There's other ones that could be to encourage debate or to challenge views. So if you're doing a public service announcement on mental health stigma, that's kind of challenging views and stuff as well. So think about the purpose. What do you want your piece of media to achieve? You need to be very aware of your form and genre. So depending on your option, you can choose a genre of film. It says type of poster. I'm taking that out. You can take film, you can take advert, you cannot take type of poster. So it's film, advert, or public service announcement. Depending on what you choose, depends on where it will be shown. If you are doing a public service announcement, that will be probably uploaded to YouTube and shown to a class. So it will be shown as a presentation almost. If you're doing a film, you can upload it to YouTube again, or you could say, my plan is to submit this to competitions. And if you're doing an advert, again, I would just recommend YouTube as a nice straightforward upload option. We've talked about equipment already. Due to institutional constraints regarding equipment, you may want to use your own equipment like your phone, iPads, tablets, camcorders, etc. And again, the tone and style will be dictated by what you choose to do. If you're doing a horror, your tone and style will be influenced by that. If you're doing a romantic comedy, your tone and style will be influenced by that. Comedies tend to have a happy, light-hearted tone. Horrors tend to be far more serious. It's just whatever's kind of going. Okay. Now, this is just about responding to the brief. These are the kind of decisions you want to be thinking about just now. If you have no idea what you want to do, there are, or is more accurately, a stimulus sheet. Right. On the stimulus sheet, there are 5 pictures. 5 completely random pictures. One of someone with a balloon face in a balloon world. One with a lady floating, possibly dead, possibly just, having a nap in a massive bath. One with a sinister bunny rabbit. Who doesn't like sinister bunnies? One with someone with a creepy shadow, fun, fair kind of vibe. And this one, which I found particularly creepy because it's a real picture of a woman after a car crash, just grinning away in her twisted wreck of a car. These are random examples, okay? If you email me and say, look, I want to do a comedy, but I want a stimulus for a comedy, or I want to do an action movie, but I want a stimulus for an action movie, that's fine as well. You do not need to use a stimulus. It will just give you something to talk about if you are running out of kind of content. If you have an idea of what you want to do and you're running out of content, you can email me and I will send you a stimulus for your idea. So if you email me saying, well, I want to do a zombie horror, I'm doing an advert, I've got kind of 4 marks out of 5 for responding to the brief. Can you give me a stimulus so that I can talk about that? Then yes, I absolutely can. I can send you a selection of stimuli for that and you can pick one. All right. So stimulus are there as an option to help you. You need not use them. I cannot emphasize that enough. So, at this stage, before you start loom number 2, what I want you to have decided is what type of media are you making? Are you making an advert? Are you making a public service announcement? Or are you making a short movie? I want you to have decided what genre, style, and tone will you use. So, for a public service announcement, you might go for formal, Or I know some of you are going for something a little bit more lighthearted, so that would be informal. You might go for a horror theme or a comedy or something like that. There will be different genre kind of markers that you have in there. You might have more than one genre marker, and that's fine as well. And then with tone, you're looking at kind of, is it lighthearted or is it serious, things like that. And most importantly, before we move on to loom number 2, is you need to decide what your piece of media will loosely look like and where it will look at. Come on, Mr. Corbett. What your piece of media will loosely look like and where it will be shown. All right. So you have to have a rough idea of what you're going to do before we move on. All right. When we move on, we'll be looking at responding to the brief, and we will actually start planning our ideas. So you need to be aware of these ideas before we start planning our assignment and start planning the first section of our assignment. Hopefully this has helped. Sorry, I'm a little bit shattered today, but hopefully this has helped. And like I said, get these 3 things done and then start the second loom for responding to the brief. I hope you're having a lovely day, and if you have any questions, let me know.